Thank you, and welcome to the Spotlight, live from Washington, D.C. Judged by international accepted norms and standards, elections management in Cameroon stands out as peculiar in more than one respect. Firstly, election management tasks are performed by a multiplicity of bodies and institutions, making it difficult to determine who is really responsible at each stage of the process. Secondly, the conduct of elections is governed by a battery of cross-referencing laws, which election stakeholders often find hard to interpret and apply. Election management in Cameroon is not entrusted to a single body, but at every stage in the electoral process, the shadow of the Ministry of Territorial Administration and Decentralization looms large over the other bodies entrusted by the law with specific tasks. Presidential degrees, MINAT, courts, and ELECAM are four of the critical bodies involved with election Cameroon. One of the single most important challenging fact facing elections in Cameroon is the building of public trust and confidence in the electoral process to the extent that election processes and results are readily accepted and cease to be the subject of such controversy that they threaten the stability of the country at the end of each electoral process. Our focus today is Cameroon elections 2025. Is ELECAM an extension of the Ministry of Territorial Administration and Decentralization? And to add to that, the credibility of ELECAM. To unpack this highly sensitive and complex issue, today are some of the finest and brilliant legal minds, political scientists, and leadership and development experts. So I have with me remotely Nelson Agbotoko, who is an academic professional with over 4 years of research and teaching experience in university settings. Currently, he is a visiting lecturer in law at the University of Law in Plymouth. He is also a certified human rights consultant. Dr. John Ako, who is also a lecturer of law in the University of Douala, and is also the author of the newly published Dual Nationality and Diaspora Investment in Cameroon, The Need for Legal Reforms. He's a supporter of Batone Akeremuna candidacy for the upcoming elections in Cameroon. And then we have Dr. Patrick Ayok, who is a development and leadership expert in the UK. And then here in the studio with me, I have my esteemed friend, Dr. Julius Tucker, who is a political scientist, a servant leadership expert, and the editor-in-chief of CamVox Media. And then remotely also we have our permanent consultant, Kenneth Day. Welcome, gentlemen. So we're going to go straight into the discussions. Unfortunately, Dr. Ako is not yet here with us, but I am hopeful that subsequently he's going to join us. There's a lot of traffic in the DMV this afternoon. On July the 26th, ELECAM announced that it has provisionally approved 13 candidates out of the 83 who applied to run in the presidential elections. The announcement conveyed by Eno Abrams Egbe, chairperson of the Electoral Board, as expected and highly anticipated, was met with swift controversy and outcry because of the rejection of the candidacy of some of the applicants, but particularly that of Professor Maurice Kamto, the candidate of Manidem Party. It's kind of surprised how things changed so quickly, that Kamto is no more of MROC, and now it's of Manidem Party. Without sufficient parliamentary support, Kamto ran under the banner of the African Movement for New Independence and Democracy, Manidem. ELECAM said Manidem supported more than one candidate and therefore can approve the candidacy of Maurice Kamto. Kamto supporters and the civil society crowd filed and argued that the CPDM also presented a list with multiple members. The UPC did the same. The Universe Party of Akeremuna and Kumvodo did the same. And so why was Manidem the exception? Why only Maurice Kamto and the Manidem Party when others did the same? My first question to the panel is, does the argument and reason given by ELECAM hold water? Uh, Nelson, I'm going to come directly to you, given that you have legal background and an extensive understanding of the constitutionality of some of these Tony electoral issues in Cameroon. Does the reason that was given by ELECAM satisfy their argument that Kamto was an exception?
Right. Good afternoon, Brado, and good afternoon to my fellow panelists. Thank you for having me once again on your flagship program. Uh, to begin with, I would say the answer to that question, prima facie, is is no, because popularly speaking, people will just think that um, rejecting only Kamto's candidacy, whereas there were other candidacies that featured dual candidates, sounded a bit ambiguous. So, in a bid for me to get into the root causes of that, I spoke to a couple of people I know at Elections Cameroon, and the reasons they gave me were somewhat genuine, because for the case of the CPDM, which has been highlighted, this member of Elecam told me that the reason why they did not consider Leon Tele's candidacy was because his file was incomplete. His file was incomplete in the sense that he failed to provide the check of demonstrating the deposition of the 30 million francs required for every candidate. So I want to agree with them for now, while waiting for will play out at the Constitutional Council, that they had every reason to reject Leon Tele's candidacy because the file was incomplete in the first place. However, on the other side, with the Manidem candidates, the both applicants provided complete files, and my informant told me that the file provided by Diodone Yebga, who is opposing Professor Maurice Kamto, his file was even cleaner than Maurice Kamto's. That is to say, he got sufficient assistance in providing a file that is hitch free. Now, it is left on the Constitutional Council to decide on who had the right at the time of the position to present a candidate for the Manidem political party. So I think that's going to be the question for the Constitutional Council to decide from Monday, as we all understand. So that's my first word on that question.
Uh, Thank you. Dr. Tucker,
Yes, sir.
what is your take on that? Does the argument and reason given by ELECAM, does that hold water?
Well, thank you, Mr. Tabenyang, for giving me this opportunity to be present in your studio to talk about this very sensitive national issue that is affecting our election that is coming up on October 12, 2025. As a political scientist and a scholar and a supporter of the CPDM, which I don't shy about it, I believe this debate must rise above partisan debate. We have to look at the institutions. And ELECAM is an institution which is governed by a law that was passed by the parliament. ELECAM is not an extension of MINAT. ELECAM operates under law number 2006/011, which gives it a personality of law. It is a legal personality and is autonomous to organize elections in Cameroon. Collaboration with MINAT for logistic and security reasons in no way is a kind of political control by ELECAM. In the United States of America and in France, the electoral commissions are being assisted by the Secretary of State, and the Secretary of State is a politician. That in no way invalidated their legitimacy. So, ELECAM, compared to international organizations like the Conseil Constitutionnel in France and the Electoral Commission in the US, that are being assisted based on security and logistical assistance by the secretaries of state, because it did not invalidate those electoral commissions in France and in America, there is no way that we can now tarnish ELECAM as a part of MINAT, where international arrangements shows that there must be a state institution that will have to assist the electoral body with logistical and security assistance. I rest my case for now. I will develop as we move on.
Dr. Ayok, I think I know he pivoted from the question. His response is going to go to the second part of this discussions. The question was, does the argument given by ELECAM that the candidacy for Maurice Kamto was rejected based on the fact that the Manidem party fielded in multiple candidacies?
Thank you. I think, the electoral system in Cameroon as ELECAM as an institution, constitutionally, it is legal, but when you look at the credibility and functionality, it becomes not autonomous. And if you look at what was published on the website of MINAT prior to the announcement of the list, you could see that there was a game plan between the government and ELECAM. That is, this is not by mistake that it happened. It was strategic to inform the public. This is exactly what will happen. And so, rejecting Kamto, and then with the other person that competed for CPDM, that was a blind game. The reason wasn't because of Kamto, it was because of government state interference, political interference in a body that is not autonomous. It seems semi, but it's not autonomous. By constitution, yes, legally, but when it comes to functionality, its credibility is found wanting. And therefore, there was a huge mistake there. You can't reconcile that.
Kenneth.
Because of multiple candidacies were put in. This has nothing to do with Yebga. Well, what I mean is that Yebga's file, whether clean or not, it doesn't make sense. I listened to Agbo Togo speak. Maurice Kamto submitted his file. On the website, Yanised Ekane is the chairman of, what is it, UPC Manidem or Manidem, however it's called now. Okay? It's in as Anise Ekane, who is the chairman. That's it. It's that simple. The government produced something, what's his name, the Minister of the Territorial Administration, who speaks English, or I'm sorry, he speaks French better than he speaks English. 2009, Ekane Anised was declared the chairman of UPC Manidem. It is that simple. Now, as computer disoriented as these guys are, without fundamental understanding of how websites work, few weeks ago they went online and changed the chairman of UPC Manidem to Yebga. I mean, come on. You see, Cameroon is so retarded at so many levels that it is really unfortunate what is happening there. Even this other famous Ndongo, Farmer Ndongo, who came up with computers about Paul Biya a few years back, went very publicly and uttered a lot of garbage to show how, as even as Minister of Higher Education, when it came to computer, he was comparing hard drive and a RAM. Can you imagine these guys and talking? I don't know. It's sad. It's really sad. Canto was rejected, and it is in fact, it is the government that sponsored Gabe's candidacy. It is clear. Why did they reject Canto? Even if he resigned from MRC, he submitted his candidacy very well. The other issue about electoral as a and as an institutional body that I don't know our
Sorry.
CPDM candidate on here was alluding to. The law creating ELECAM was changed after the elections in Ivory Coast, whereby ELECAM no longer became autonomous. ELECAM was now brought under the Ministry of Territorial Administration. And even worse still, Elecam used to announce, in fact, Elecam's, what do you call it, their articles, they used to allow their elections to the results to be published at the poll and, come up and then eventually published by Elecam. But after what happened in Ivory Coast, the law in Cameroon, Elecam law in Cameroon was changed, and Elecam can no longer announce results. It's only the Ministry of Territorial Administration. So it is not an independent body. Many years ago, I looked into that law detailedly. So maybe Agbo can enlighten us on it. He's more conversant with the whatever the law may say.
Thank you, Kenneth. And I think we just got Dr. Ako John Ako joining us in the studio. As indicated earlier, Dr. Ako John Ako is a lecturer of law in the University of Douala and the author of Dual Nationality and Diaspora Investment in Cameroon, the Need for Legal Reform. So I think you can see the book. Dr. Ako, where can we find the book?
Yeah, presently I was here to carry on the initiative to present this book to Cameroonian diaspora in the United States. On the copies we had are still with me. So those who are in need, including yourself, anybody can get in touch with you as we continue to gather more support, especially, this election time. The crucial vote from the diaspora is very important. I was here again on a double figure to present the candidacy of Batonia Akeremuna to Cameroonian diaspora, including the value of this book, which all of us know that since 1968, it has been an obsolete law that the protection of the Cameroonianness is no longer history and that the world is moving towards a global village and that Cameroon should not be left behind. So the lapses in the law of 1968 today call for mobilization at the level of the diaspora. And Cameroon diaspora has become more
I think
diverse.
we'll get to that. You'll have time to talk about the book and the need for diaspora involvement. I think in the studio, since you just get in with us, we have Dr. Julius Taka, who is a political scientist and servant leadership expert and editor-in-chief of CamVox. Remotely, we have Kenneth Day, who is a permanent consultant, Dr. Patrick Ayok, who is a development and leadership expert in the UK, and then we have Nelson Agbotoko, who is also a legal expert and a visiting lecturer of law in the University of Plymouth, and is also a certified human rights consultant in the UK. So our first question was the independence of the action taken by ELECAM. The argument was based on the rejection of the candidate of Manidem, Professor Maurice Kamto. And the reason given was the multiplicity of candidates that was presented by that party. But Kamto's supporters argue that the CPDM also had several lists, the UPC had several lists, the Univer party had several lists. Why was Manidem the exception? So our first question was, does that argument or reasons given by ELECAM, does that hold water, or was just a smokescreen? Yeah.
Yeah, you realize that Cameroon has been under torture politically, and again, the constitution of that country has been hyper centralized with a more presidentialist regime, which means the aspiration of the executive has always been more supreme to those of the legislative and even judicial power. So when we see at the corpse or whatsoever the shadow of what we call the ELECAM today is directly a dictate of the CPDM system, when you get on first the composition of that particular organ, and you realize that many of those who are central, I'm talking of even the president of Election Cameroon or the directorate, what they call the chairman of board of directors, all are former pundits of the ruling party, the CPDM. And to what extent you think such an organ might be independent or not act in favor of the ruling party, still throw a lot of doubts. If there is any institution that needs some amendment or need to be reformed or recreated in Cameroon, is the organ in charge of organization of elections. But this equally indicated somewhere, which I want others to know, is that what we have today, those who are in power do not accept that you should have a confrontational character as a member of opposition party. Coming a lot of declarations of the MRC party, there is an indication that there is a tussle between the MRC and many members of the ruling government. That we cannot doubt it. To what extent they went concluding that there was equally a second candidacy of the same party has left many Cameroonians in doubt, because it was not only an issue of the MRC, it was equally even of the Univer party. It was the same case with the CPDM party. But to what extent this of Maurice Kamto becomes so special that there was a need for a rejection? We begin to look at it again to some extent that the government in Cameroon is playing, because today when you look at the powers that be, you need to look at the presidency of the republic. Somewhere you have the director of civil cabinet, you have the secretary general of the presidency of the republic, you equally have the first lady on the other side of the coin. And together, these are forces against the opposition activities in Cameroon. And I think very strongly that if Cameroonians need to do is that 43 years will warrant us to know how rotten the nation become, and even before the election, the instability or the corruptible nature of elections Cameroon is one which will doubt whether opposition should even go for election. But then, like any other democratic society, elections is a summary to prove the democratic nature of every nation. And so Cameroon might, if nothing is done, just practicing what we call a sham election or an election for propaganda to indicate to the international community that the nation Cameroon is democratic. Okay. And to what extent ELECAM will handle and give us results, Cameroonians should notice. It is not only an issue of the MRC party. You can equally just witness that one of the opposition leaders, even though his candidacy was equally accepted, was intercepted at the Yaoundé International Airport, Simalen, not to move out of the country. At the time, we think oppositions are responsible for mobilizing support from their grassroots or from their supporters. Elections Cameroon might just be as the Constitutional Council. The election Cameroon might be like the Supreme Court. Election Cameroon might be like any other ministry that does not see anything wrong with Cameroon or those who have been governing for the past 43 years. Okay. It becomes very, 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 very important. Like I said, it is a call for all Cameroonians. To what extent some Cameroonians even understand, it becomes difficult because they are being ruled by the principle that I wish to see my children grow up.
Thank you. Nelson, let me come back to you. The argument about the candidacy of, or the rejection of the candidacy of Maurice Kamto in particular really begs the clarification as to what are the internal rules as to who is supposed to authorize the candidacy of each of these political parties. Because it doesn't make sense that Anissa Rekani is saying they invested Maurice Kamto, and then some other authority or structure invested Yevga, and then you go to the various other parties. So if you look at it, who is responsible? Because even with the CPDM, I don't think that it is the Secretary General's role to invest the candidate for that party. It should be either the secretariat or an organ within that political structure. So, can you help clarify our viewers what is or what kind of guidelines are in place to recognize that within this political dispensation, this is the authority that is responsible? And if this is the authority that is responsible, if two individuals, let's stick with the case of Manidem, for example, came in with two candidates, and the recognized structure within that political entity is a president or their politburo or whatever they call it, invested Maurice Kamto, then automatically the candidacy of Yevga should be rejected. But if you look at it otherwise, and the legal authority that invested Yevga was a constituted authority of that party, then Maurice Kamto should be the one that is rejected, not both candidates, which does not make sense to some of us who have a basic understanding or common sense of the law. Nelson.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes. Let me say a hearty good afternoon to my friend and brother, Dr. John Ako, who I'm seeing for after a very long while. He was my classmate back then in secondary school.
It's a
So
pleasure
I'm happy
shared.
to see him, to be on the same panel with him today. So coming back to the question, it is important that programs like this should serve as a pedagogy for our listeners. Now, why I'm saying that is not to say that I don't decry the partial way with which ELECAM has operated. However, ELECAM did that because they wanted to remain consistent. There is a jurisprudence as far as ELECAM is concerned with the rejection of multiplicity of candidates, which has to do with the UPC in the 2018 elections, if I'm not mistaken, where there were also a duplicity of candidacies, and ELECAM systematically rejected those candidacies. So ELECAM just wanted to be consistent with its jurisprudence. Now, coming back to the intricacies regarding candidates, you see, it's difficult for anyone to defend ELECAM in its rejection of Maurice Kamto's Manidem candidacy. This is because there is demonstrated evidence that from 2018, Diodone Yebga was jettisoned from Manidem. He was dismissed from Manidem. And Anise Ekane has been carrying out the functions of the president of that party from 2018 up until 2020, when he even mandated their lone councillor, which they have now, to run for election. Until that date, his position was not contested. In April, Elekam wrote to Anise Ekane inviting him for meetings and other subsequent meetings that he has attended in the capacity as a president of the party. So if you ask my legal opinion, I will tell you without mincing words that Anise Ekane is the legitimate president of the Manidem party. Based on that, Maurice Kamto's candidacy was not supposed to be rejected, just like you are saying. However, Cameroon, being a rogue state, supported by our very eloquent in French, Atanganji, who is ready to violate every law at his disposal at every given time, they are deciding to push Diodone Yebga forward and providing him with all the necessary things that he needs to put Maurice Kamto's candidacy in jeopardy. Why am I saying this? Diodone Yebga has a letter of mandate signed by himself as president of Manidem. And Maurice Kamto has a letter of mandate signed by Anise Ekane. Now, this is where the problem is. ELECAM's hands, according to the law, are tied because ELECAM is not a legal jurisdiction. ELECAM is an administrative body that does not have the power to go into the political affairs or the legal affairs of a political party to decide who the president of the party is. If a case like that happened, just like in 2018 with the UPC, ELECAM rejects the both candidacies, especially if all of the candidates provide all the necessary documents required. In the case of Manidem, Yebga and Maurice Kamto, both of them, their files were complete. Whereas in the case of CPDM, as I'm told, Tele's file was not complete. So we are going to see in the days ahead, which I find very interesting, what the CPDM is going to say, because Taylor has put in a complaint as well to reject Paul Biya's candidacy. Because according to the rules of the CPDM as well, it is a central committee that sits and gives a mandate for the front runner. But we all know that the central committee has not sat for more than 15 years. So when and how did Paul Biya get his letter of mandate when the central committee has not sat? If you look at the images that demonstrated the day they were going to deposit his candidacy, the file was basically handed to Jean Kwete in the hall of ELECAM, which means that every document was carefully crafted by the presidency and everything was handed to Jean Kwete. So when did the CPDM sit to delegate the candidacy of Paul Biya? So
All right.
some of these things are the things that we are going to see in the days ahead.
All right, Nelson, hold on to that thought. Dr. Ako, you were going to chip in something to what Nelson has just articulated.
Mr. Nelson, thank you very much listening from you. It's very pertinent that we need to know the distinction between the Central Committee of the CPDM and the CPDM Congress. These are the two bodies that are in charge of, how can I say, mandated to give the mandate of the president or whosoever should be the president of the CPDM. Yes, for more than 2 or 3 decades, there have never been a Congress, meaning somewhere the CPDM party has erred to present a candidacy of, of President Paul Biya. And secondly, we have not seen a consultative meeting of the CPDM Central Committee. The Central Committee members are scattered all over the national territory, depending on the number of constituencies. And so there was none of that meeting. What we saw carried out by the Secretary General of the Republic, whom in that capacity acted as Secretary General, was not in the name of this CPDM. We equally noticed that even the second rule, in the absence of a national congress, did not still satisfy the candidacy of President Paul Biya. So somewhere the ELECAM has somewhere that they are supposed to annul the candidacy of the two candidates. If Trielo Nana's file was not complete, the modality and the means under which a candidacy of President Paul Biya was submitted, I have not read anywhere in the law that the candidacy of the leader can be submitted by a proxy. We have not equally seen that. So that is equally another aspect that we saw the president or the chairman of the civil cabinet presenting together with the secretary general of that party to hand over the documents of the head of state, that we have not seen equally. Whether there is a power of proxy that was given to them to deposit his file, or it was just done as an anarchical regime in always BF.
All right. I'm going to bring in Dr. Tucker here. Based on what Nelson and Dr. ACO have presented, it, it provides the implication that ELECAM is not independent. Uh, uh, I think if you look at, if you read Muzaffar 2000 in 2022, basing its analysis on institutional location, that is the extent of their political autonomy vis-a-vis the government, you have at least three types of autonomy as far as election commissions are concerned. The non-autonomous election management bodies that are located within the formal government bureaucracy, the semi-autonomous that are located within the formal government bureaucracy but are placed under the supervision of an autonomous body established specifically for that purpose, and then the autonomous election management body that are located within the formal government that are otherwise known as independent electoral commissions because they are located outside the formal government bureaucracy. But I think our conversation today was looking at it's a ELECAM, an extension of the Ministry of Territorial Administration. With what Nelson was saying, it's an administrative structure, just like you have administrative units across the 56 or so divisions in Cameroon. Because there is no way anybody is going to argue that MINAT is not heavily involved in the organization and the way elections are done in Cameroon, because right from the divisional or subdivisional level, the SDOs are involved, the DOs are involved, and even the registration of voters at the divisional level is, and even candidates is done by the divisional officers and the senior divisional officers. So where does election or Cameroon or ELECAM falls in these non-autonomous, semi-autonomous, or autonomous election management bodies?
Thank you, Mr. Tabenya. I will not delve into the question I've answered already concerning the autonomy of ELECAM. ELECAM is an autonomous body, and ELECAM needs security guarantees and other assistance from MINAT. Like in France, the Conseiller Constitutionnel works with state, local governments in order to assist them in accomplishing their task. In the US, the Electoral Commission also assists the Electoral Commission. The Secretary of State assists the Electoral Commission in the US in the management of the elections. That having been said, let me go to the most peculiar point that was raised by the previous both speakers. CPDM, in its Article 22 of the basic text of the party, stipulates that the national chairman in English, or the Président National in French, is an automatic candidate for presidential elections. Sub-articles also explain that the CPTM does not organize primaries because it is by virtue of party discipline and the strength of the bylaws of the party, the president of the party is the candidate for all presidential elections. Let us go into the nitty-gritties who says that there had not been a Congress. Such issues cannot be litigated by any law. It is being managed within the party. The CPDM has only one national president, and Onana is not a national president. When you want to register a political party, you have to forward the article of the party, and that is where ELECAM looks at who is the candidate based on the internal regulations of the party. And by virtue of the internal regulations of the party, we in the CPDM only have one candidate based on who is the national president. Onana is a nobody, could be a member of Manindem that just pops up to register for elections in order to sabotage the candidacy of the CPDM. So, elections within the party or not the CPDM will not be looking at procedural issues within its party. It is looking at the presidency. Every political party seeks to win elections, and the CPDM will not waste money and time to organize a congress in which the opinion poll is showing that Phobia has 99.9% of the support of the registered militants of CPDM, both at home and abroad. So the question of whether there was any consultation is not to be considered, because the party periodically holds section conferences, and I can note that the 250 sections of the party, both at home and abroad, had given a motion of support to his head of state, pleading with him that he should continue to be the candidate of CPDM. So I don't see why ELECAM should be the judge of opportunity for CPDM's basic text. Paul Biya is our candidate. Paul Biya is the president of CPDM, and Onana is not.
Dr. Ayub, if I may bring you in here, Dr. Ako, I'm going to get back to you. It appears to me that Cameroon is suffering from an entrenched and rotten system, given the complex and confusing interpretation of some of the statutes of these political entities. Is it just this rotten nature of the system, or there is a state capture of every administrative tentacles in that country by the CPDM, by extension, the person that incarnates the CPDM, Paul Biya Bivondo?
Thank you, Brado. Thank you so much. I think it is a complete state capture. And I feel so sorry for those that are oppositions, because Cameroon doesn't have opposition. Cameroon is a democracy without opposition. That is why you see rampant repression. You saw what happened to Issa Choruma, to Professor Maurice Kamto, and a lot of people, political repression. Now, it is always very simplistic when you listen to our CPDM supporters talking, like Dr. Taka. Sometimes he makes unsubstantiated statements, which I find too simplistic. You know, when you look at the statistics, is talking about 99.17% for CPDM. It doesn't make sense. Can you prove or show us the opinion poll result, the poll result that was conducted? When was it conducted? Please, let's not make such statement on live TV, because we are on educating our people rather than educating them. Okay, let me move to the real thing. First, we shouldn't be talking about election. That's why I feel so sorry for Dr. Ako and the vibrant Cameroonians. We saw this toxic institution, this institution that is void of autonomy and independence. What they should be talking should be reforms, total deconstruction of the sham called CPD. It's called ELECAM. You can't be building on marshy land. You cannot have that. You can't work. The whole thing is you're struggling to build on marshy land. First, if you look at the autonomy as an institution called ELECAM, let's look at this aspect. In terms of legal interdependence, yes, it makes sense because it comes from the Constitution, but it doesn't have a functional credibility. Political interference, CPDM thinking that ELECAM is its brainchild and it owns ELECAM. You can see that working between Atanganji and Eno Abrahams, Minat, and the organs of ELECAM. The third thing is appointment process. How was ELECAM as a body appointed? That is very important. If you compare with sub-Saharan African states, let's take example of Nigeria in terms of appointment process of the election body. Look at Ghana, look at Gambia. in sub-Saharan Africa. The appointment process in Nigeria is through the cabinet, the Senate. When the president makes a decision, they vet it and do the same thing. If you look at the appointment process in Cameroon, it is appointed by the president. That's ELECAM is appointed by the president, which make it not autonomous per se. Now let's look at the funding process. How do they get their money? ELECAMS automatically becomes an employee of the, the government, which is the CPDM, because it is the primary funder of ELECAM. But when you look at Nigeria, where the money comes from the federal government, in Ghana, the money comes via the parliament. In Zambia, the same thing. So now, how do you look at autonomy? Let's leave that aspect and go to the operational capacity of ELECA. Look at the leave opportunity for rigging to take place. They still use manual processes rather than biometric. That is why a lot of people can commit as candidate. Because in every country, when you have your final candidate and you present one candidate, why do you leave opportunity for other people to present, then you start rejecting people? It is because of the way the government wants to manipulate the system. In terms of technology, Cameroon is zero. That is why elections are easily rigged. It is a very big problem. And now looking at in terms of logistic and delivery. So what I'm saying is the whole system is rotting. The whole system is decomposing. The whole system is dysfunctional. What our brother, Dr. Ako, what Dr. Taka should be doing, what other Cameroonians should be doing, is to start from scratch, destroy ELECAM, rebuild from fresh before you start thinking about election. Otherwise, you are trying to build on marshy land, which I feel so sorry for you guys. It's a
Kenneth,
waste of time. It's a waste of energy.
yes, Kenneth, to dovetail with what Dr. Ayuk, the scathing indictment of Lekam by Dr. Ayuk, I can understand it's hard to argue that Lekam is independent, considering that they're deriving their funding from the government. The entire appointment process is done by one single individual, the president of the republic. And like Dr. Ako said here, majority of the members, if not all, and like Dr. Taka likes percentages, 99.9% of the members of ELECAM were appointed by the head of state. Now, how do you justify or argue that that body is independent? Kenneth.
ELECAM is not independent. From its very inception, you had people, most of the people at ELECAM have all been drawn from the CPDM party, whether it was Mr. Fonkam Azo, Pinin of Santa, or Abdullah Mustafa from the Grand North, and today, what's his name, Eric Isue, you know, from the Central South. No, none of these people are independent. They are all drawn from the CPDM. And as I had mentioned, when elections took place in Ivory Coast, excuse me, the law of ELECAM was changed. ELECAM is under the authority of MINAT. And in this case, our Paul Atanganji. Brado, please permit me to piggyback on something I find very important, which we seem to be missing in this whole thing. Because what CPDM is doing, CPDM has bastardized the institutional structures of Cameroon. It's a pity. You see, from an institutional level, first of all, ELECAM should not even be involved within, because they are not an institution to litigate anything. That they even put out 81 members is already an issue in itself. Because imagine one of their things, they say, okay, you're below 35 years old, you cannot happen. How did the validation take place? So that's there's problems at all levels. Okay. In the case of CPDM, a prime minister of a country which Cameroon models France is drawn from the majority party in parliament. So when you look at who the people, the individuals submitting for what's his name, Paul Biya candidature, who is Vondo Ayulu in this matter? Director of Civil Cabinet, the director of what happens in Paul Biya's kitchen. Jean Kwete, CPDM Central Secretary General, as well as John Gute, Prime Minister, head of government, CPDM, drawn from the majority party. Those are the people who should be submitting Paul Biya's candidature. And then, of course, to even make matters worse, I have here with me, contrary to what Taka is saying, these are the basic text of CPDM. They're supposed to hold their ordinary Congress or extraordinary Congress. And that is where their candidate is vested. When did they hold one? I'm sorry. And then they make a very fictitious claim that the Central Committee held, I don't know how many years ago, maybe 7 years ago, and then said that, oh, their national chairman would. No, that is even, according to another article, that Central Committee was supposed to hold again. It's supposed to hold, I think, twice a year, something to that effect. They never held since 2018 or so, or whatever the year that was, or 2021. So again, CPDM violating its own statutes and so on and so forth. I mean, come on, guys, let's be serious. As Dr. Ayub mentioned a few moments ago, you know, ELECAM, and we're going to go for these elections. We're going to go for this and use their same institutional force, whatever it is that they do. That fear that they've instituted in the population, it is going to change camps, and they will see what will happen.
Dr. Ako, let me come back to you. And I think the thought that you had when Nelson did his take on the issue, you might chip that in now. But based on this conversation and what Kenneth has said, the opposition knowing fully well that the system is broken, the system is rotten, wouldn't that make sense to say both the opposition candidates and the political elites are basically living a lie, knowing fully well that this is the situation and the obvious conclusion that the CPDM have already gamed the system and the results is a foregone conclusion?
One of the things we need to know, and at times certain response or answers might not be convenient to others, is that the democracy in Cameroon is a continuous one. And equally, we considered that the level of democracy in Cameroon is still at its infancy and very, very premature. Every Cameroonian should understand that. And those who have been following elections in Cameroon should know that the ELECAM was born after criticisms and revisions of the law. At one time there was ONEL, and today we have ELECAM. I equally believe that an engagement which is civic and equally national calls on all Cameroonians, and that their opinions are needed. That's what I ended my proposal the last time, that the amendment and the arrangement of whatever ELECAM becomes is a consensus of all Cameroonians, and nobody can be very proud that ELECAM is today perfect organ. Our talking here presently is equally a quest for such suggestions and brilliant ideas that can reaffirm the future of the democracy of that particular nation. Abandoning, like I said, one of the errors which Professor Moise Kamto made was to have shied away from the same institution in 2022 and not participate in the election. We wouldn't have been having the same debate we are having here now if he does participated in those elections. The same errors that were committed by the SDM party in 1992 took SDF back to the rail to where it is now. I have equally authoritatively said several times that the errors made by Professor Moise Kamto and his party in 2022, in 2020, will haunt him till the end of time. And these are the consequences. I've called it the fallout. ELECAM is an institution all of us know very well that what you find ELECAM suffering is what the Constitutional Council is suffering, is what the courts are suffering. But that will not stop us from reporting cases to the courts. That will not stop us from reporting cases to the Constitutional Council. That will not stop us from participating in civic responsibilities and activities organized by ELECAM. The President of the Republic remains the lone person equally, if we might know, who appoints and nominates members to occupy state offices. One of the things which we act from the ruling party is to dissociate government from party politics. Government is for all Cameroonians, while the CPDM party belong to the militants of that party. Organizing events of a national nature, of a governmental nature, must be dissociated from purported CPDM activities. This is what we are crying, which comes back to lie on the independence of state institutions. President Paul Biya and CPDM might disappear, but the nation Cameroon will remain. And that nation Cameroon will remain with its government. Institutions are of the government and not of the ruling party. ELECAM, if born to live, will live with the criticisms and foresights of what we are doing right here, and we continue to heed on it. But we will not shy from participating from the activities which are constitutionally of the ELECAM. While participating in that same light, we continue to carry forward amendments that might, maybe, in the future, you will hear of an independent electoral commission, like it is named in other democracies, where elections will be organized, votes counted, candidates will be considered, and the results given by the same body. That is the extent to which we are believing, and I think talking about it should not cause any fear. While we accept the present failure, there is a need for amendment. And ELECAM, I'm telling you, out of this particular regime, which I said at the beginning, hyper-centric and dictatorial system instituted for more than 43 years, it is not easy to crack through such a knot. But I know that always time can give us that particular preference. And the advantage will come back, that the criticisms we made today are the foundations for the future of that particular institution. And keeping off or scraping it off might not help us now, or we might not have the rules now. But then the future, which I think is positive with all the contribution I see, Mr. Nelson, and I believe I want to think too that Dr. Echu, we need to equally understand that the CPDM is CPDM and the state of Cameroon, the state Cameroon, which is our government. There are many members in government who are not members of the CPDM, and such rules should function to accommodate each and everybody. When you tell Cameroonians blatantly that this candidate will not stand, and it ended up not standing and giving excuses. In a normal democracy, the candidacy of President Paul Biya was supposed to be rejected because none of the criteria of the same party was observed. We didn't see what we call motion of support are not found in any constitution or instrument of the CPDM party. Motion of support were invented by the French propagated standard to see that you have the support. And you see, it is already been copied around Africa. And I'm telling you, the dust just settled in Cote d'Ivoire. And people will tell you there was a motion of support, but no commission, no institution mandated you to be a leader. These are things that help to retract or backtrack the democratic efforts of Cameroonians and the institutions we have been building since and even after independence. So Cameroonians have to learn that making ELECAM better will mean participating in ELECAM's activities and not keeping away from that particular institution. And I will wish that Professor Moise Kamto might be just a victim of such an egoistic, failed system which some of us have identified more than 2 or 3 decades ago.
Nelson, to come back to yes, I'll bring you in, Dr. Taka, but let me get Nelson. Nelson, if I hear Dr. Aku well, he is much more talking about the long term and the future. It appears at present we are left to our own demise, that the most challenging thing that is happening in Cameroon with the electorate is because they feel that there is just nothing they can do to uh, get themselves from this rotten system, and it has really sown a lot of distrust in the system. And that is why you get 8 people register or 8 million people registered to vote. 3 million people end up voting if actually those results are accurate, because you have areas where more than 100% of, of the people who registered voted for a particular candidate. Does that really explain the level of apathy that the Cameroonian populace have towards elections and their institutions in general?
Okay, thank you once again, Brado, for giving me the floor. Before I jump into your question proper, I'd like to go back to 2 points made by members of the panel. First, from Dr. Tucker of the CPDM. I'm sorry, but I would like to say I'm convinced to say that Dr. Tucker is a joke. He's a joke in the sense that he is not educating militants. He should be able to have the statutes of the CPDM with him. And if he had that, he would understand that the Central Committee of the CPDM mandates the natural candidate of the CPDM in every election. So if they go by the constant violation of their own laws, he should not come on live television to try to justify that by quoting institutions in France. Secondly, I would like to differ with Dr. Ako in one item, which is him saying that Kamto boycotting the 2018 election or the 2020 twin elections is going to haunt him for a very long time. If that is to be the case, if the boycott is going to haunt Maurice Kamto for a very long time, then the postponement and the violation of the electoral calendar should haunt the regime in place forever. Because according to our electoral calendar, municipal and parliamentary elections were supposed to hold before the presidential election. Why did the government not follow that calendar? There is no justifiable reason that can account for the postponement of that election, except the fear of Maurice Kamto and the mobilization that he has built in the past 7 years. So I think that the issue of the boycott haunting him is not a game, is not coming to the play here. Because boycott to me is a measure of expressing yourself
I
as
mean,
a political leader.
Nelson, to come to that, I think even when Frundi boycotted those elections and they came back strongly, I had about 40 something parliamentarians. They really did not do anything anymore. So sometimes it's hard to justify these reasons.
I just want to come with, before maybe Nelson continues,
Okay.
that if he thinks very well, the postponement of parliamentary election is constitutional, and that the President of the Republic has the mandate to do
To
that.
do that.
And
Okay.
even before, you should equally know that in 2018, the same mandate of members of parliament and councillors was equally extended. So that's the president that has been. He is a legalist, and I believe you understand. He calls jurisprudence. If you are a technocrat in politics, don't get the other party a possibility of haunting you. So that's what we continue saying, that politics is not Jangi house. The rules are very complicated, and if you get to it, be committed to follow those rules. Where you commit an error, they hold on it. Like you just said, the popularity of Ning Jong-fundi dropped from the 1992 election to when he went in for parliament again. It's never the same, and that is the frustration till what we have, what the STF is today.
Taka, yes, you wanted to come in, please.
Yes. I would like to commend Professor Ako, John Ako, for his level-headedness in constitutional law. And we must separate institutional responsibilities from partisan perceptions. Sometimes parties have some perceptions which are not grounded into law. I am not a legal luminary, but before I could graduate as a political scientist, I read some law and I read constitutional law. if you don't go by the procedures, you will be sanctioned. And every political party is looking and navigating a way to have the competitive advantage. And although CPDM is a ruling party, it does not preclude them from looking into loopholes where they can nail their opponent and to shine. This is about political power. Power is not gotten from the platter of gold. You have to look for it. You have to seek for it, and you have to fight for it. And if Maurice Kamto failed to run for the 2020 elections, and he as a legal luminary knows that if you don't have parliamentarians, and if you boycott from that election, it invalidates your party, and he did that, then he is not to be trusted. And then he turned around and ditched his FRC party for Manidem. Where is Maurice Kamto's loyalty? So please let us.
Can I continue? Can I continue my purpose, please?
We as scholars are first of all supposed
He's
to
taking my time.
of reforming. Oh, it was off. Of reforming our party. I'm sorry that was off.
No, we were capturing the other side.
Yes, so please let us.
Dr. Taka, you're using my time. You're using my time.
As a legal luminary, bring forth proposals that will continue to assist ELECAM, which is a work in progress. ELECAM is better than ONEL, and ONEL was better than MINAT. You know, before ONEL, it was MINAT, single-handedly. ONEL came, and due to international criticism and also from reform proposals from the opposition, notably SDF, ELECAM was created with safety valves. We are going to continue to move forward, and Dr. Ako is saying that participation is best than boycott. Don't burn the roof, protect the house. So I lay my case.
Dr. Taka, you have used my time.
Let us continue to participate.
Thank you. Thank you. Nelson, were you saying something? If not, I'm going to go to Kenneth.
No, I was saying something. You did not allow me to finish. If I did not know you, I would say that the CPDM man,
We are running out of time. Go ahead.
So I agree with Dr. Ako about the constitutional provisions of postponement of elections. However, the reasons that were advanced by the government were lame. We must also agree that. Now, coming to the question of ELECAM's independence or autonomy, I would say Elections Cameroon is not an extension of the Ministry of Territorial Administration, but the degree of its independence, the degree of ELECAM's independence is highly constrained by legal institutional linkages. Why am I saying so? If you look at the law that created ELECAM in the first place, law number 2006/0011 of 29 December 2006, it says that MINAT maintains a permanent liaison with ELECAM, and ELECAM is obligated to submit copies of minutes and progress reports to the ministry. Now, how can you say an institution that has to submit minutes and progress report to another institution is independent?
1 minute.
Dr. Taka, there is no way you can justify this. Okay, so that is it is based on that ELECAM cannot make its own decisions. It waits for the Ministry of Territorial Administration to tell them what to do, and the presidency as well, in terms of appointment of members, in terms of financial autonomy, in terms of technical support. If they need to be independent, all these things must come under the autonomy of ELECAM.
All right.
The Electoral Committee of the United States submits minutes of their activities to the Secretary of State, who is a politician.
All right, let's agree with that. I think it will be difficult for us to really litigate the entire electoral code in Cameroon. I'm going to switch gears now, given my conversation with Dr. Ako. Kenneth, in 2018, Batonia Keremuna, the leader of the People's Development Front, the FDP then, said he decided to withdraw his candidacy in order to benefit Maurice Kamto. He stated that, "I firmly believe that the future of Cameroon is a top priority and it's worth every personal sacrifice." He wrote back then on Twitter. Fast forward today, Muna is a candidate. Should Kamto, given his troubles, return the favor in kind to Akere Muna this time around by throwing his weight behind Muna?
Brado, I will answer this question with a little bit of honesty and some historical evidence
And no, go straight to the
based
question. We don't
on.
have time. The historical stuff, just hit
Okay.
this.
See, to cut a long story short, the answer to your question is yes. If the CPDM regime, and based on everything that we're seeing, decides to bar Maurice Kamto from running, then a good turn deserves another. We are saying to Maurice Kamto, Mr. Maurice Kamto, Prof, forget about the Francophone elite mentality. Come and support a platform for a single candidate. And opposition leaders are meeting, even as we speak. They met in Fumban, probably, okay, it's 7 p.m. in Cameroon. Maybe they're still on their meeting, but there are opposition leaders who are meeting today. And they're trying to come up with a platform. So whoever comes out of that platform, my hope is that it is Akere, is going to be Akere Muna. And we are requesting that in 2018, as Akere Muna threw in the towel and supported Maurice Kamto, Maurice Kamto should do same. Let him not be too egotistical, and let him bid farewell to this their francophone elitist mentality. The masses of the people are quite different from them. But once they get to this elite level, their minds work differently. I don't know. It seems to be wired to Paris somehow.
Okay.
Let us work for Cameroon.
Thank you. Dr. Ako, just to piggyback to what Kenneth is saying, is that just enough? What is the vision that Akere now presents? That in 2018 he decided to back Maurice Kamto. What has changed? That if Maurice Kamto ends up being validated by the Constitutional Court, what has actually changed now that he cannot? Or would he also be open to see back Maurice Kamto as a single opposition candidate?
Yeah, one of the things we need to know in politics is that there is always a give and take. And we understood that in 2018, it was Muna that gave. And if the game need to be in that standard, every Cameroonian is believing that a single opposition party cannot win the elections in Cameroon. If we all agree, and with all international and national opinions, that if opposition doesn't come together, the results might not change. If the results can change, so there's a need for alliances or coalition. Should Maitre or Batonia Keremuna still align with Professor Moise Kamto? It will not hold grounds if we still present Kamto as the leader of that platform in the same position of Akere, which you mean, and many Cameroonians will be thinking, that the elitist politics of the Francophone Cameroonian might have still triumphed over a marginalized Anglophone Cameroonians. And we think if they are all of the same frame, because when you look at their repertoire, I'm talking of their CV, the two candidates, Maurice Kamto and Batonia Keremuna, almost presents equal forces. And working on an equal table, speaking on same qualification, they are all international experts and all who are legal luminary. There is a need for Professor Moise Kamto also to give that aspect of humility in politics by submitting that one turn deserves another. It is obviously and should be the turn of Batonier Akeremuna. I have passed the whole of this week coaching and preaching for the need for submission by the MRC party to the candidacy of Batonier Akeremuna, and that there is no need for us going confrontational with the government. And I believe very strongly that if Professor Moise Kamto now comes out to say the right candidate for this election is Batonier Akeremuna,
I told a lot, many Cameroonians will see him as one of the biggest politicians now because it need to take courage for a man and how humble he is to endorse another candidate. This is the type of Cameroon we want, not the high horse leadership, which you think at every juncture it must always be you. This is what we find several times within the members and supporters of the MRC party, which is a contrary of Batonia Akeremuna, who presently is a leader of the people, and many who saw him or did not see him last 2018 election are now more visible and thinking that if there is a need for an Anglophone leadership, which many other Francophones have endorsed, you want to know that the Parti Univers, which endorsed Batonia Keremuna now, is from the Francophone side of the territory. And again, we are talking of the UPC. One of the fractions of the UPC that endorsed Batonia Keremuna is still from the French side of the territory. So why equally not rally the support of Professor Moise Kamto and his MRC party? Because today there is a need for the Anglo-Saxon system of management, which we all know. Some are already getting frustrated that if you have to have an Anglophone as a president in Cameroon, it will mean a lot of the tricky style, because we have presented Batonia Keremuna as one of a leader with integrity. He is equally named Mr. Clean, would mean the corruption standard of Cameroon, which is always his first position, might find difficulties being perpetrated under Batonia Akere leadership.
Thank you, Dr. Ako. Patrick, let me bring you, I think we're getting to the end of it. Doc, I'm going to switch to the book after Patrick. And please, you can begin to formulate your final thoughts. We're running out of time. Patrick, if I hear both Dr. Ako and Kenneth, it's not about the system, but the inability of the opposition to present one candidate to face the Lionman in Vomeka.
Thank you.
And then the issue about the English-speaking regions, that is the southern Cameroons. I know you have a deeper knowledge of these issues. What is your take about the Anglophone candidate? And what is the role of the two English-speaking regions as far as this election is concerned? Some have argued ferociously that without their involvement, it would just be like throwing their own votes and civic responsibility to the Francophones. What do you really say into this argument that this time is for an Anglophone, and would that address the root cause of the crisis in that region? Would that also call for the immediate release of the Anglophone leadership that has been, or the Southern Cameroon leadership that is in the dungeons of Kondengi?
Thank you, Radu. I think that is foolhardy. I've listened to fellow panelists with a lot of respect. I see them having great passion in presenting their idea. For the Anglophone Southern Cameroon in particular, because I find it difficult to talk about Anglophone Cameroon or whatsoever. I don't like to pretend. The Southern Cameroons, I think they do not have something to gain or to lose from Cameroon election. And those people that say that if Southern Cameroonians do not participate, then it will be at their disadvantage. No, they are just a minority. A small cube of sugar, a cube of sugar in a huge basin of water. So if 80% can vote, then the election will be maybe participated. But can the opposition win? This is where I find it difficult, because they must always articulate the right thing. Talk about the release of Sisiku Ayoktabe and the rest of the Naira 10s and those that have suffered for far too long as far as Cameroon repression and repugnant activities are concerned. That is not a bargaining chip for Cameroon election. It is their responsibility if they stand for the truth and they want to make things work. The most important thing is separating the opposition from the structure. If you want a good system, you talk about the structure and the superstructure. The structure is ELECAM, and part of the superstructure of that structure is MINAT. And then you have the opposition, which in my own reasoning and from my perspective, and you look at democracies, progressive democracies, Cameroon doesn't have an opposition because the opposition are being clamped down. There is no freedom of speech. There's no freedom of movement. The ELECAM was formed with a mandate for a free and fair election. That will not happen. And if Akaremuna or Professor Maurice Kamto support Akaremuna candidature, that will not solve the problem. If the election is rigged, what will safeguard that? The opposition should start thinking of what will safeguard their votes rather than telling people to go and vote.
Thank
If
you,
people
Doc.
vote, how will you
Thank you, Doc.
safeguard
Let's
them?
wrap up.
So there should be a
Let's wrap up.
system in place. Let me conclude, please. So there should be a system in place to ensure that what they are doing is possible. ELECAM was created in 2019, and you still think it is at its infantry stage. Let me tell you, if a house is rotting, if a house is no longer working, it should be demolished and rebuilt. You need to reform, you need to rebuild, and before you start thinking about election for the betterment of the better interest of all Cameroonians.
Thank you, Dr. Yoke. And if I might remind of the panelists, the only time where an opposition won an election in Cameroon in 1992, there were multiple opposition parties. Coalition, but still they were
the same Onel.
Yes,
with the same
so
MINAT.
there was,
They won.
but they won. Given that the system is what we have lived through for 43 years, the system has not changed. That is what is so challenging for people to swallow. That even if the opposition presents a single candidate, given the complex nature and the opacity in which the ELECAM, MINAT, the Constitutional Court, and even the decree from the presidency, is hard for you to beat both the referee and a member of the opposing team. So thank you, guys. I am going to have each one of you for 30 seconds give your final thoughts, and then I will be having a conversation with Dr. Ako about what he has for the diaspora for 2 minutes. Lati. Yes, go ahead,
Yes,
Dr. Tucker.
I want to be a little bit controversial. I am a CPD and militant, but I'm also a political scholar, and I am independent. I want to say it without any fear of failure, that if Maurice Kamto is a genuine politician that wants change in Cameroon, he should throw his weight behind Batonia Muna. If he throws his weight behind Batonia Muna, his momentum equally now lies to him. So I am not supporting the opposition because they have not proven to me that they are interested in genuine change. What they show me is that they are interested in themselves. I am not on the payroll of the CPD and government. So therefore, I can speak without any fear of failure that when Cameroonian politicians will prove to some of us that they are for change for real, and this comes to Maurice Kamto, I'm talking to him clear, that if you want change, and if you could go to Manindem, then Manindem fail you. And there's a candidate now that supported you in the other elections to prove your strength, talk to your supporters, to throw your weight behind Muna. And when you do that, it will change the battlefield. it will give us more work in the CPDM now to ensure that we win from the region of Batubemuna. And I want to talk to Amazonians leaders that in life you have to always change your tactics. If we can rely, if the Amazonian can rely behind a leader
Dr. Taka,
that
please wrap up.
articulates that the release of the Nara 10 is part of the manifesto, I believe that he will win the support of those folks. In politics, you do what it takes to win elections. So I am advising both Akaremuna and Maurice Kamto to look at the Southern Cameroonians and seek their vote and also to come together. I am saying this not as a CPD militant but as a political scholar. That when we come together, we become stronger. I rest my case.
Thank you. Nelson, please, let's make it snappy. We are out of time.
A revolt that I've been cheated of time today because the panelists have used a chunk of my time, so I've not had enough time to articulate on my
Don't worry, we'll bring
points.
you
So
back. We'll
that
bring
is
you
all.
back. We will
That's a
bring you
protest. That's a
back.
protest motion we're just
We
putting
will
now.
bring you back.
So my last point would be on the coalition, the prospective coalition of opposition political parties, which to me I think is a good thing. However, the history of politics in Cameroon has demonstrated that the pride and arrogance of our political leaders is made it always very difficult for opposition parties to come to form one ticket. Now, saying that Professor Maurice Campbell should throw his support to Akeremona if at all his candidacy is rejected is something that I accept. I agree with that wholeheartedly, and I think if that happens, the atmosphere in Cameroon is going to change drastically because Maurice Kamto, whether as candidate or not, still holds strong political power and is going to be a game changer, whether he becomes a candidate or not. However, I would advise Muna's campaign team members to stop bringing out the idea that support should be because Muna supported him in 2018. To me, what happened in 2018 was not support, in the sense that it was done 24 hours before vote. That to me is not a support that you want to give another political party to
48
win an
hours.
election.
48 hours. 48
48
hours.
hours,
Very
yes,
less. Yeah,
John.
thank you.
John, 48
Thank you.
hours, but Muna ballot papers were still found in ballot boxes and people voted for Muna on election day. So, to me, if he were supposed to
Please, please.
support Amto, he would have done that
Mr.
years
Nelson,
ago.
we are talking about Cameroon.
Let's allow him
And no,
finish.
I just want to know that
If you
the
want to
ruling
do
party will
good
use any
things,
means
if you draw
to
that line, stop using that line
discredit
because it's
the
not working.
opposition.
Let's leave
That
it.
line is not working. That support of 48 hours was not enough support in a
Okay.
context like Cameroon. So now that they are in discussions, they should make fast and pick a single candidate. They should not wait on the eve of the elections to say we are throwing our support to A or B or C when they know already that they have lost. Okay, so that's to me is the advisor I have for the political scenario that we are seeing. Thank you
Thank
very
you,
much.
Nelson. Uh, Kenneth, please be snappy. Don't go to history. I beg you.
Problem. Well, I would like to appeal to the powers that be within Cameroon, to Minister Paul Atanganji, to revisit his conscience. Yeah, Ferdinand Gongo, to revisit their conscience and think about the aftermath after October 12th. Where will they be? Where will their families be? And so on and so forth. You don't want to fall in the dragnet of almost a 100-year-old man who is pretty much spending, if at all, maybe the last 10 years of his life on this earth. A new president, whether monies have been stolen left, right, and center, there are presidential pardons. So we do not want the rough equivalent of a full blown civil war or an insurrection in Cameroon. We've seen these things with Tombombai in Chad, with Cote d'Ivoire, Yugoslavia, Nicolas Ceausescu, and I mean, you name it. These things have happened almost everywhere. So it is an opportunity for Minister Paul Atanganji to for them to sit. He's the head of some security council, whatever they call it there in Cameroon. Let them sit and look at themselves in the face. I mean, what are they trying to do in the armpit of Africa? They need to get real and reasonable and let us move forward as a country. Thank you.
Thank you, Kenneth. I think you would also agree that they are also safeguarding their interests. Maybe you are looking at it from a different perspective. You probably might be seeing a 6 and they are seeing a 9. So that is why that's where the whole game is. You are looking at it and saying they will be caught in the dragnet of 100. They are already in the dragnet. How are you going to be saying that they will be caught in the net? They are a part of the net. Dr. Ayo? Dr.
Panelists,
Ayo?
and thank you. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes. Please be snappy.
Yeah, thank you, Brado. Thank you, fellow panelists. Thank you to our viewers all over the world. I think when I listened to the final conclusion, a conclusion of Dr. Taka was very interesting. Talking about Kamto giving his candidacy to for Anglophones to vote or Southern Cameroonians, it simply makes sense that, there are two Cameroons. And Kamto's Akaremuna represents Ambazonia, and the CPDM is for one and indivisible Cameroon, and the French Cameroon is La République du Cameroon. So they don't have anything to do with Ambazonia. So they cannot talk about prisoners, they cannot talk about other people. Now look at the way forward. This is the way forward. The way forward that we need to look at it is start with institutional reforms. When you reform your institution, you revise the appointment mechanism of ELECAM. Bring in the civil society, bring in the judiciary, bring in political parties to have, there should be an oversight and there should be some sort of safeguarding mechanism. Because even if the Ambazonian candidate, Akaremuna, wins the election, that as far as, according to Dr. Taka, there will be no safeguarding mechanism. Neil John Frundi was claimed that he won, but there was no safeguarding mechanism. The second thing is operational improvements. Make sure there is operational improvement. If we don't do those, we cannot go to civic engagement and inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you. I think as far as even Maurice Kamto endorsing an Anglophone candidate, we should not forget that there are two Anglophone candidates. The people within the SDF argue strongly that they are the most implanted party within the two English-speaking regions. So if there's going to be an Anglophone candidate, Joshua Osei should be the one that any potential coalition should fall behind. But we all agree that it would depend on the platform. So when they're having this conversation, it should not just be because you did for me last time, I'm going to do it for you this time. We should make sure that we look into the political vision and the plan of each of these candidates. Dr. Ako, I know when you came in a little bit late, we have talked about the diaspora investment and dual nationality issue. Which is a very, very sensitive and important issue as far as the role of the diaspora is concerned. A lot of people here in the diaspora, for those of us who have invested a lot into some of these communities, the disappointment has been the complete disengagement, not only of the foot soldiers, but the academia, the elites here in the diaspora, because of the way they have been treated by the junta in Yaoundé. If you try to ship a container from here to Douala, before you clear that container from the port, the amount of hassling that is involved, the extortion that is involved, has discouraged a lot of potential investment that was supposed to come into that country. To even get a visa as a Cameroonian with an American passport is problematic. I walked into the Gabonese embassy. I was asking a visa for 5 days. They gave me a visa for 5 years for $100 and something. To go to Cameroon, the most they're going to give you is about 3 months. That does not make any sense for a country that is open for its diaspora to invest. The issue about dual nationality, a couple of years back, there was a delegation that came from Cameroon, and the guy who came in here and said, "Oh, we are ready to do this whole diaspora dual nationality thing." When he got back, he got fired. So I know we've run out of time, but please, can you use 2 minutes to talk about the book?
Yeah, I'm happy that you are a bit involved and concerned about the issues that have been raised in this book already. One of the issues as a Cameroonian, and which many others are seeing, is that a Cameroonian does not need to go through the process of visa, and that you need to buy your flight and your passport will be stamped in Cameroon. This is what we want. And equally, when we compare of importation and export, yet Cameroon have one of the highest tax system, which is not only applicable to Cameroonian diaspora, but to every businessman doing business with Cameroon. This is where equally we think the intervention of the diaspora, Cameroonian diaspora, is very, very, very pivotal. Second, or third, we think there is lack of this link between the government and Cameroon diaspora because of an institutionalized policy towards attracting diaspora investment. And that's why we are ordaining within this book that there is a need for an institution, a ministry. Why not create parliamentary position reserved for Cameroon diaspora? Why not again institutionalize diaspora associations in various countries where Cameroonian diasporas are found to continental levels, to why not an annual or biannual diaspora meetings that will be engaged in Cameroon so that diaspora issues can be discussed. We are talking of the Diaspora Investment Board within this book, managed by diasporans, and why not a diaspora bank that will be catering for diaspora finances? Because what we discovered is that there's that lack of trust and confidence of the government in Yaoundé, and many diasporans will not like to put their money where they know the results will not be obtained in the desired domain. So this particular piece of literature comes in to instigate and equally to inform Cameroonians with my few stay. How many days in the United States have just created a forum on Cameroon Diaspora Initiative, which I think all of us, including yourself, I just integrated you there, that there is a need for a conversation. Because one of the issues is that there is a conflict between Cameroonian diaspora, I mean among Cameroonian diaspora, not talking of the government itself. So I want a sincere discussion among Cameroonian diasporas to think of what they should do or what should be done. And in the second phase, why not create a pressure group back at home that applications or resolutions that have been taken by the Cameroonian diaspora can be tabled before the government, and to some extent, those who are abroad know that passing a law warrants lobbying. Why not put a group that can equally lobby among parliamentarians, senators, and ministers or ministries that are concerned to see that this goes, starting with the Ministry of External Relations. These are a lot of things which we are going to do there. And why not? Bringing diaspora investment, people should have it. That the American wars against Russia, the UK war against France are all wars to protect diaspora investment in those nations.
Thank you,
and
Doc.
we need Cameroonian diaspora. For no nation has developed without her diaspora.
Doc, thank you. What is the price and where can we find this book?
Yeah, in the United States, we are giving it for about 15 francs, which some people said it's about $30. But if you are in Cameroon, you can have it in any of the libraries in Boya. Yes, we have the Godson around entrance to the University of Boya with Mr. Rehebet, or I mean a friend. And again, in Douala, I'm present, and I have Dr. Ndwa Esther at the University of Yaoundé too. And presently here, there is a brother of mine, Ako Daniel, and Anita Takang Eno at Charlottesville, that's somewhere around North Carolina. Anytime you get to these people, you will have a copy.
Okay, I think I would suggest they should create an Amazon link, which most people could order that easily online. Thank you again to all the panelists, and thank you to our technical director, Mr. Jules Lati. I think I know we've gone way above the time, but these are critical times for Cameroon. And it is apparent that most of the time when you get to these conversations, they drag on because this is an inflection point, and the future of that country is at stake. So again, thank you. This was the Spotlight, live from Washington, D.C. And I want to thank all our panelists, particularly Dr. Taka, Dr. Ako, and Kenneth, Patrick, and Nelson. Thank you. Dr. Ako, you said you wanted to say something?
No, you said you had to chip in something on the book.
Oh, okay. 1 second. Go ahead.
Yes, I want to congratulate Dr. Ako, John Ako, for his wonderful initiatives. And I want to say that as part of the Donald Trump's administration, which I am, we are looking into assisting African countries to produce raw materials into finished goods. So what he's talking about, diaspora connection, is that the government of Cameroon should create a ministry of diaspora with an economic department where it will assist Americans and those in Europe to set up businesses in Cameroon without the taxation and without the authorization fees. So this is an advice to the government of Cameroon to create a ministry of diaspora with a department of economic development.
Thank you, Dr. Taka. I think, not to belabor the point, a lot of what, just looking through the chapters, a lot of these points that have been carefully written by Dr. Ako have been extensively talked about here in this community. And I am hopeful that the powers that be will begin to take the diaspora seriously. I do not know where the fear is coming from. A lot of what is happening there is a fear of the diaspora coming in and maybe taking over their political positions. So a lot of these things that you are saying, the deep conversations about either the financial system, the diaspora involvement in politics, all of this, a lot of it in the early 2000s and mid 2000s, these conversations have been really things that have been engaged upon. But thank you so much, and thank you to our viewers. Thank you, Lati.